Have you ever noticed the more you open up to your family, the more exhausted you feel afterward? Sometimes you speak just to lighten your heart, but somehow things end up more tangled than before. You might tell your children about your health, your savings, or just how it feels to grow older, and suddenly their eyes change. Their advice feels like judgment, and worst of all, a quiet distance begins to grow. As we age, we become more sensitive, not because we're lonely, but because we're so often misunderstood. We're still clear-minded, still independent, still full of thoughts that make sense. But one honest confession, just one, can lead others to see us as fragile, needing supervision, or worse, someone whose life choices now require approval. I know that feeling because I've been there. I once believed that being open with my children would bring us closer. But after many years, I learned this truth. Not everything needs to be said. Not because we're hiding, but because keeping some things to ourselves is how we protect our peace. And the good news is, finding peace at this age isn't complicated. We don't have to change anyone. We don't have to act tough. We only need to know deeply which things are worth holding on to, and when, and with whom, to finally share them. If you've been searching for a quieter, gentler way to live, I invite you to sit with me warmly, softly like old friends, side by side, together. Let's reflect on 6 simple truths that may quietly change how we live these precious years we still have left. There's something I've learned after turning 65. Not everything needs to be explained, especially when it comes to money. Many of us were raised to believe that honesty and transparency are what keep a family close and in harmony. We want to leave things organized, well-planned, so our children won't struggle later. But at some point, you begin to realize too much clarity can quietly take away your sense of freedom. Because even when your finances are deeply personal, they can become a lens through which others judge, suggest, or even begin to influence your life. I understand that urge to share everything. It feels like an act of trust. But the moment you start talking about your savings, your spending plans, your intentions for later on, you may start to feel the quiet disappear. In its place, come the suggestions, the subtle advice, the concerned looks, as if every decision you make is now something to be weighed, discussed, or adjusted. Suddenly, buying something you love, going somewhere on a whim, or just spending a little to treat yourself becomes something you feel you have to justify. Are you sure? Mom, isn't that a bit wasteful? Shouldn't you save that for later? These questions often come from care, but sometimes even well-meaning care can chip away at your independence and make you feel like you need permission to enjoy your own life. After living through that feeling again and again, I've come to realize this: keeping a part of your finances private isn't selfish. It's a way of protecting your right to live fully in this stage of life without having to explain every dollar you spend, every small joy you allow yourself. It's about peace, about being able to make a decision quietly, just for yourself, without waiting for approval. Sharing is good, but everything in its time and in its right measure. As long as your mind is clear and you know what you want, you still have every right to decide for yourself without needing to ask. And if one day you need help, you can open up then, but not before, because real peace doesn't come from others understanding everything about you. It comes from knowing that even in your later years, you're still in charge of your own life. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still unsure, please stay with me, because the second truth we'll explore touches on something just as familiar: what we choose to say about the legacy we'll leave behind. There are certain things, I believe, that are better kept quietly in order, not hidden, just gently arranged in your own heart. And planning your inheritance is one of those things. Many people after 65 begin to prepare for the future. They get the papers in order, they think about their health, about writing a will, and deep down, they hope, if I explain it all now, clearly, there won't be confusion later. Things will be fair, peaceful, respectful. But in reality, saying it all out loud too soon can bring consequences you didn't expect. Because once you start saying things like, "This house will go to your brother," This account is meant for your sister. You're not just dividing property. You're shaking something far deeper, the emotional balance within your family. You'll notice a shift in the room. The silences become longer. They may not say a word, but you'll feel it, a subtle change in the way they speak, the way they look at you, the way they show up or don't. It's not that they're bad people. It's just that money, whether we like it or not, has a strange way of stirring up thoughts, expectations, even quiet comparisons, long before we're gone. What hurts most is when you begin to wonder, are they visiting out of love, or are they waiting? And suddenly, you find yourself holding back, not just with money, but with little things like giving a gift, offering help, or even sharing future plans. I've seen this happen to people I care about. They thought early conversations would bring clarity. But in truth, love should never be placed on a scale, and it should never require an explanation. There's something we only understand after living a long life. Clarity doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, silence is the greatest protection for the bonds we hold most dear. If you've already appointed a legal representative, if you've written your will with a clear and thoughtful mind, if you've done what's needed to protect what matters, then that is enough. You don't owe anyone an explanation about who gets what or why you chose the way you did. You don't have to turn a deeply personal matter into a family discussion around the dinner table or the holidays. You have the right to protect your own quiet until your very last moment, not because you're hiding, but because you're loving. And because you know, only when love isn't shaped by money can that love truly remain whole. If you're still watching this video, maybe part of you has felt that same uncertainty. Should I say something, or is it better to wait? But transparency isn't just in words, it's in responsible action. And a clear, properly stored will, that's transparency. And when the time truly comes for others to know, you'll choose the right moment, a calm space, filled with trust, where you can share it gently, without weight, without fear. But if you're still healthy, still clear-headed today, I invite you to keep that peace to yourself a little longer. Live your days without carrying the burden of curious glances or hard-to-answer questions. Let your legacy be what you leave behind, not something that steals your freedom while you're still here to enjoy it. If this has stirred something in you, I welcome your thoughts in the comments. Because who knows, someone else may need to hear your story too. And now, if your heart feels a little lighter, I'd love for us to keep going into something just as delicate, knowing when to stay quiet, when tensions rise within the family. One important lesson I've learned is that not every family conflict needs your voice. At our age, many of us share one quiet wish to see our children and grandchildren live in harmony, care for one another, and carry forward the love and values we tried to raise them with. We hope for peace, for a family free of harsh words, silent treatments, or distance. But life rarely follows such simplicity, and people, even those bound by blood, can still collide. Sometimes it's pressure, sometimes it's miscommunication, sometimes it's just that they haven't yet learned how to express what's really in their hearts. When we were younger, we often played the role of peacemaker. We stepped in, tried to mediate, tried to make things right between siblings, or smooth things over for the younger couples. Sometimes it worked, but other times, it made things worse. I remember times I only meant to offer a gentle word and somehow it was misunderstood. Instead of easing tension, I became another reason for blame, another voice in an already crowded room. The truth is, not everyone is ready to receive advice even when it comes from a loving parent. As we grow older, our role in the family begins to shift. We're no longer the ones making every decision. We've done our part. Now it's their turn to figure things out, to stumble, and hopefully, to find their way back to each other if the love is strong enough. And us, we who have weathered enough storms to know better, we don't need to intervene, don't need to analyze, don't need to push anyone in any direction. I believe every family has that one quiet anchor, that one person others turn to when everything feels unsteady. If that's you, then your calm presence, your patient heart, may be the most meaningful gift you can give. Sometimes just saying, "I trust you'll find a way to work through this," means far more than hours of lecturing or trying to fix everything. Silence is not neglect. It's protection. It's a way to preserve love when things are too fragile to touch. I used to ask myself, if I don't speak, who will? If I don't step in, what might happen? But in time, I realized some lessons can only be learned when we let them walk through it themselves. When we step in too soon, we might prevent them from ever learning how to truly make peace on their own. And sometimes, intervening too often can make us seem overbearing even to those we love most. I don't want to be someone my children feel nervous around. I want them to come home and feel relaxed, even if they're carrying something unresolved. If you found yourself in this same place, then I believe you understand what I mean. You don't need to attend every argument. You don't have to take sides. You only need to remain steady so that when someone in the family feels worn out, they know there is still one safe place to return to, a place without judgment, without sides, without pressure. If anything I've said today has eased your heart, I invite you to share a thought in the comments below. And if you're still unsure whether to speak or stay silent, just remember sometimes, the quiet strength of someone who's lived long enough to understand is exactly what helps others grow. Now that we've made peace with silence, let's move on to something just as delicate: those moments when we talk too freely about our health and accidentally give up more of our independence than we realize. There are changes in the body that I've chosen to keep to myself, not because I'm hiding anything, but because I've come to understand not everyone needs to know everything. All of us, as we age, go through a season when the body starts sending quiet signals of brief pain in the lower back, a restless night of sleep, or a moment of lightheadedness in the morning. By this point in life, these things aren't new. They become part of the rhythm of getting older, reminders that time is moving, and we're not quite the same as we once were. The trouble is, we often feel the urge to talk about them too often. We mention our aching joints, bring up that doctor visit, say something small about our sleep, all with one simple hope to feel cared for. But what's sad is that sharing those things doesn't always bring the comfort we expect. Instead of quiet understanding, we get concern. Instead of someone just listening, we get instructions. We're told to stop doing this, to give up that, to be more careful. A passing comment like, "My legs are sore today," might lead to someone saying, "Maybe you shouldn't drive anymore." A casual mention of poor sleep might suddenly make others think we're declining faster than they realize. And slowly, those well-meaning concerns begin turning into interference in decisions we still feel capable of making ourselves. I don't question their love. I know they care. But what I do question is how easily we start to see ourselves as fragile just because we talk about our discomforts too often. And that's not how I want to live. I want to be seen as someone who still takes care of himself. Someone who knows when to ask for help and when it's okay to handle things on his own. Some aches don't need to be mentioned. Some sleepless nights don't need to be reported. Because deep down, we know which signs matter and which ones will pass on their own. And when something truly serious happens, we know how to find a doctor, to seek advice without turning every dinner conversation into a health update. I believe that holding on to a little quiet strength can be its own kind of reassurance. When our children see us gardening, driving to the store, taking morning walks, they'll think, "Dad's still doing fine, Mom's still okay." And then, those visits feel lighter. Not check-ins filled with worry, but real reunions, gatherings built on love, not fear. Because sometimes, what exhausts an older adult isn't the physical pain. It's the feeling that we're losing control of our lives just from sharing too much. Do you ever feel the same? That holding back a little doesn't mean you don't want care, but simply that you're preserving your sense of freedom? If you felt that, I'd be honored if you left a note in the comments. And if you're still wondering how much to share and what to keep, maybe now is a good time to step back just a little and live in a way that brings peace to your own heart. After all, I still believe an older person can be a picture of quiet strength, not just a body to be protected. And if you're ready to carry that quiet strength within, let's keep going together into something far more personal. The weight of the dreams and chances we once let go. There are things in life I've chosen to keep quietly within me, not out of secrecy, But because some memories don't need to be spoken aloud, the older we get, the more memories we hold. And with them, regret can sometimes run deeper. Not because the missed chances are larger, but because we now understand more clearly what we gave up and why. The trips we never took, the passions we once lit, then quietly let go. The choices we might have made differently if only we had allowed ourselves to live a little more for our own joy. These regrets are real, but they don't always need to be shared, especially not with the ones we love most. Because when you speak of what you never got to do, even if it's just reflection, your children or grandchildren may hear something else. They might wonder, was it because of us did mom give up her dreams for our sake? And in that moment, instead of feeling closer, a quiet, painful distance can grow. A guilt that doesn't belong to anyone suddenly finds a place in both your hearts. I've seen this happen. A heartfelt confession can become a heavy burden for the one listening. You feel bad for making them feel bad. They feel bad for not realizing earlier. And what was meant to be a simple memory turns into something weighed down by sorrow. So now, I choose to carry those unfulfilled dreams as quiet parts of my journey. I let them stay where they are, no list, no full account. Because sometimes silence is the kindest way to respect both yourself and the one listening. I believe in the power of speaking, but I also believe some truths should wait until the listener is ready, truly ready, to hear without guilt. And that kind of readiness rarely comes in rushed conversations or on busy days filled with distractions. It certainly shouldn't sound like if it weren't for. Instead, I choose a different way. I look back on my life with softness. And instead of saying I wish I had, I now say I've learned a lot from what I lived through. Because when I speak that way, I'm not blaming my past, I'm not blaming myself, and I'm not blaming anyone else. I'm simply honoring the path I've walked with all its turns because they made me who I am today. And you know what? When we tell our stories with gratitude in our voice, our children can feel it. They'll think, Mom didn't do everything, but she lived fully. She made peace with her life. And that feeling, more than any inheritance, is what helps the next generation walk stronger. If you still carry unspoken thoughts, ask yourself, why do I want to share this? If it's to lighten your heart, write it down. Talk with a friend who's lived long enough to understand the same feelings. But if you want to pass something on, speak with gratitude, not from a place of loss. At this age, what we need most is a soul at ease, free from weight, free from regret, simply living forward, grateful for what still remains in our hands. And if you too carry quiet regrets, I hope you find a gentle way to hold or share them at the right time, with the right person, in the right way. And when that heaviness has lifted, we can sit together for one last reflection, one that's deeply personal, quiet, yet powerful enough to shape how our loved ones see us. Loneliness. There are certain kinds of loneliness I've chosen to keep to myself, not because I'm afraid of people knowing, but because I've come to understand that speaking them aloud doesn't always make the heart feel lighter. Growing older can be quiet. It shows up in slow mornings where you pour tea for one with no one across the table. It fills the afternoon air when the phone sits silent all day, no calls, no messages, and it settles in strongest at night when you turn on the TV. Not to watch anything, but just to soften the silence of the room. This kind of loneliness, no one means to cause it. It just arrives with time. Old friends have gone. Visits grow fewer. Family is still there, but busier now, pulled in 1,000 directions. I know that feeling of sitting alone, sighing without realizing and thinking. It's been a while since anyone asked how I'm really doing. And when the phone finally rings and your children ask how things are, you may feel the pull to say what's real. I felt sad today. No one dropped by. I didn't speak to a single person. But I've learned something over the years. Not every loneliness needs to be placed on the shoulders of your loved ones. It's not that we don't have the right to share. It's that if we speak these feelings at the wrong time, in the wrong way, they can make others feel something we never intended: guilt. Sometimes just one sentence like "I haven't spoken to anyone all day" can weigh heavily on a child who's already juggling work, kids, or their own stress. That one sentence can become a burden they don't know how to lift. They begin to feel they're not enough to make you happy. And that feeling, even if born from love, can push them further away. Not because they love you any less, but because they're afraid they'll never be able to do enough. I've seen that distance form, slowly, softly, but clearly. You speak more about your loneliness. They speak less on the next call. You want closeness. They begin to feel pressure. And soon, both of you are hurting, but neither knows how to say so. I'm not saying we should hide our feelings, but with age and perspective, we learn some emotions aren't meant to be unloaded. They're meant to be acknowledged gently and with compassion for ourselves. I choose to write these feelings down or share them with a friend my age, someone who also understands what an empty room at sunset really feels like. I go for more walks, spend more time outdoors. I build a life that's quiet but not silent because I don't want my children to feel they carry my happiness. I want them to see that I'm still living not perfectly, not always joyfully, but with openness, with effort, with my own quiet strength. If you ever feel that emptiness, try placing a hand on your heart and taking a deep breath. Remind yourself loneliness is real, but you are not alone. And instead of making others carry your sadness, try caring for yourself first. And then, if you choose to share, do so gently without making anyone feel they must fix what you've simply been brave enough to feel. Is there something you've been holding in? If you're ready, I invite you to share it in the comments. It doesn't have to be long, just a few quiet lines, because sometimes knowing someone has read your words is enough to ease the weight. And after all, we've chosen to hold back the finances, the health, the memories, the silence. We come to realize something deeply true. Keeping something to ourselves isn't hiding. It's a way to live with a little more lightness. Because true peace doesn't come from saying everything. It comes from knowing what to quietly keep, just for ourselves. Perhaps after a certain age, we stop wishing for grand things. We just want to feel light inside. We just want our private thoughts to stay where they belong, not burdening others, and not leaving us empty from saying too much. And most of all, we want to feel that we're still living meaningfully. In our own rhythm, slow, quiet, but full and present. You've lived through so many highs and lows. You've loved, you've given, you've carried others on your shoulders. And now, maybe it's time to come home to yourself, to learn how to hold peace gently, not as a way of closing the door, but as a way of going deeper into the time you still have. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't have to share everything. You only need to understand yourself and be gentle with whatever you choose to keep. If you're still listening now, I truly thank you. And if there's something you've chosen to quietly carry, I invite you to leave a few words in the comments. Maybe, just maybe, your quiet reflection is exactly what someone else out there needs to hear. And if you believe this video might speak to someone you love, please share it with them. Because a soft, honest voice can sometimes open a quiet place in someone else's heart. Wishing you peaceful days ahead, genuinely peaceful, from the inside out.